come along with us as we dive into the fascinating world of sound, exploring its many dimensions, blending the best of both worlds to uncover the secrets of sound, voice, and vibration. Hello, everyone. My name is Ruth Ratliff, and today is a conversation bridging the science and spirituality of sound healing, another episode of that. And today, my guest is Trish Gent. And Trish, I'll tell you a little bit about her, is a registered nurse turned life coach, Kundalini Yoga instructor, and a co-host of the Wellness Empowerment Project podcast, which I'll have a link for that in the description. As she pursued professional advancement, the anxiety and stress that she managed for most of her life continued with no relief. After taking an impromptu Kundalini Yoga class on her bed one day, a distinct shift was realized. From there, her desire to learn what shifted brought her to recognize that her nervous system was unregulated. And once you get a regulated nervous system, it changes your outlook on life and relationship with yourself. So her podcast, The Wellness Empowerment Project, is herself and another nurse exploring the art and science of holistic modalities. So as I said, I'll have a description for that and and how to reach her. Trish, how are you? And thank you so much and welcome.
Oh, thank you, Ruth. I'm honored to be here today, and I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So nice to be with you and to have this conversation.
Yeah, we've been wanting to do this for a while now. Trish and I actually did a collaboration together a while back, and with Kundalini Yoga and sound therapy. It was wonderful. I have taken a couple of, was it a couple, I think, of her Kundalini Yoga classes. Oh my God, so unbelievably difficult. I couldn't believe how hard it is. Really, it's an extremely challenging type of yoga, and it also includes sound and mantra, right? So that's what I thought. It was fascinating, and I wanted to explore that a little bit more with Trish and pick her brains on her expertise on Kundalini Yoga and the how she brings the voice in with the mantra. But first, I wanted to just find out, how did you go from nursing to Kundalini Yoga? You know, I mean, you were talking like in your bio a little bit about the stress and everything, but if you can give us a little more of a fuller picture of that.
Oh, sure. So, yeah, like I said, I've been a nurse, for a significant period of time, we'll say. And, I was in a lot of high stress areas in nursing. I was in critical care, I was in trauma, I did clinical research, and I was a manager for 8 years as well. And I always probably had some low level anxiety. And I really thought it was my personality. Oh, I'm a perfectionist. I'm just type A. So was my father. My mom's a worrier, just I literally thought it was like a personality trait that I just had to manage. And I kept thinking that at one point I would get relief. Once I hit this certain level, once I made this amount of money, once I had these things done with my life, I'd be able to relax and I wouldn't have to worry about anything anymore. And I think I was in my second manager job and I was doing very well. I enjoyed it. I had friends at work, married, home, all the check boxes. And I'm like, why don't I feel any different? It was even a smooth transition. I even had other people saying like, oh, this transition was so smooth. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, why don't I feel any better? Why am I still constantly exhausted? And you could say I went through the typical things we think is going to make things better. So I kind of go through the whole, I'm working too many hours. And I was working a ton of hours, probably close to 60 a week. To the point that, I was so exhausted on a Friday that, there's really nothing, I had nothing left to give. And I would leave at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon and be like, I have nothing left to give. And there was nothing left of me in the evening or for the weekend. Because really my life was really surrounded with that one aspect of work. Because even my friends were from work. All my friends were nurses. It wasn't really, I wasn't really showing all the different dimensions of myself. It was very, very one-sided. Of course, at the time, I didn't really realize that. So I think, I'm always looking, I've always wanted to see how I could improve, or how things can be done differently. And so I literally was reading through Mind Body Green, and this caption caught me, and it said, increase your frequency. And I can't remember if it's something about anxiety or not, but it caught my eye. So I click on it and I start watching the video, and it was Guru Jaquette talking about Kundalini Yoga, talking about it's a technology and how it affects your nervous system and your glandular system. And, it is, a science of angles and triangles and sound. And it fascinated me, and it kind of made sense. So totally unprepared. I'm watching it. And like I said, I just started, they start going into a class. I wasn't even thinking I was going to do a class, but I'm like, well, I'm already watching this video. I'm already interested in this. Why don't I just do it? So yes, I just started doing it on my bed. And I will have to say, I hate it when people say, or hate, I don't take out the word hate. That's so hard. I know a lot of people say that it's difficult, but it really depends what you personally find difficult and what particular kriya you're doing, because every kriya is completely different from each other, and each one is designed for specific effects. So some kriyas, if the physical part is challenging to you, that may be more challenging. There's others that you may spend a lot more time in breath work or meditation, and some people may find those more challenging than the physical ones. So they're all very, very different, but what they all have in common is we're doing a physical practice, we're doing breath work, we're also doing, the mantra, and all of that is to increase our frequency. And after I took that first class, I was just like, whoa, I felt different. And I don't even know if I could describe it other than different at the time, but I knew that this is what I was looking for. And really from then on, I just started exploring Kundalini Yoga. How can I learn more about it? And I just started exploring it by myself on video. And then in 3 months, I decided I was going to sign myself up for teacher training. And at this point, I still didn't do an in-person class. I just knew that I needed to know more.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's interesting, you just see one video and boop, it changes your life, right? It's so cool how you're guided. But I'm interested in the fact that, you're coming from an allopathic background, and right, and you're going into this very esoteric, sort of spiritual practice, as it were, in a sense, right? Because it's physical, but it's also a very spiritual practice. Did you have any resistance? Did your training as a nurse, did that was that kind of giving you a little bit, oh, that can't be for real. Oh, come on, that there's no scientific basis for this, type of thing. Did you ever feel that?
So interestingly enough, and I'll be honest, Kundalini Yoga is known as the weird yoga. So I kind of embraced myself into a community as soon as I could. And at first it was like an online community. And I think because I was such a novice into it, I was more like, let's explore more. But with that said, I knew I was feeling different. I knew I was feeling better. I was hearing other people's experiences. So I do see how people could see there's a dichotomy of it. But with that said, I also did have a clinical research background. And when you look at research and evidence and science, it's a process is what it is. It's not something that's definitive yes or no. And part of the scientific strength of even research studies, it is the lowest form, but one is expert opinion. And I do believe when it comes to our bodies and what we think is best for us, we do have those answers. So from that standpoint, it was more of, I have nothing to lose. I know I'm feeling better from this, and I am trusting myself just to keep going.
Mm. Yeah, no, wonderful. Absolutely. The intelligence of your body was telling
Yeah.
you, yeah, that this is what you needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
There, and that's a lot of times we're not taught to trust in that. And that there's an intuition, a knowing that no, this feels right for me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that is trustworthy.
It was, and it's interesting because
Yeah.
I could probably say that, and we actually had a conversation about this on the podcast once, is I think that was the one of the first times that I just did something, right, and trusted myself. And I didn't sit there and be like, oh, let me go through the research first, or let me do this first. And it was just more of like, no, let me just do this. I feel better. It's something that, at the very bare minimum, it was something that was good for my health because I was doing something that was physical, or was good for my mind because I was attempting meditation in a different way. And I think that was a big part of it too, is that everyone talks about how wonderful meditation, is for you. And it is. Don't get me wrong, it's absolutely amazing. But typically people talk about doing a guided meditation. For me, guided meditations never worked because my mind was always running in a constant circle. I would even my husband would say, he was like, and even employees of mine would say, they're like, we can literally see your mind turning in your head the whole entire time.
The
So
wheels are turning.
always, always. So I was, you know, and that's why it was hard for me to get to sleep, because I was always constantly thinking. I totally struggled with quiet in my mind. And I think that was one of the pieces with Kundalini Yoga too, is that my mind was starting to quiet. And I believe it started to quiet because the meditations in Kundalini Yoga are very active meditations. You're not just sitting and, you know, in dead silence. Even though that is a good meditation practice to do, most people need to work up to that point. And in Kundalini Yoga, most of the meditations, you have multiple aspects of them. You have an eye gaze, a specific way that your place that your eyes are looking and holding a certain focus. You will have a mudra, or the way your hands are positioned. Sometimes there's movement in there, sometimes there's not. You're just holding that specific position itself. Um, Sometimes there's a mantra that you're chanting with it. Other times you're doing a specific breath work. So you're at least doing three of those things at one time when you're doing a meditation. So because you're focusing on so many things, it actually kind of helps quiet the mind down. And then over time, you're able to, you recalibrated, your brain a little bit, you balanced the hemispheres, you quieted that mind. So when you do meditations like a guided meditation, or even a quiet meditation, a silent meditation, you're really able to, when those thoughts come into your brain, able to say, okay, thanks, and then let it move on.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other piece people forget, is they think that meditation, you're sitting in silence or your mind is quiet. Your mind's never quiet. Every
No.
time you
Yes.
blink, there's 10,000 thoughts that stream through every time you blink.
Mm.
It's what we're doing when those thoughts come to us. Are we going to go down the rabbit hole and start exploring those thoughts? Or are we going to allow that thought to pass by and then bring us back to focusing on our breath, or the mantra, or the hand movement, or the posture we're in?
Yeah, I have heard that from experienced meditators. They said, no, no, it doesn't mean that my mind isn't active in meditation. It's just that I don't focus on the thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
right? And let them pass by. Yeah, yeah, it's very profound. I think what you're talking about is, I experienced that in your class, was that it absolutely builds more of an awareness of your body,
Mm-hmm.
your body mind, the connection. Um, there, because anytime you're doing anything, you're building in movement with sound or with breath work. I think that's something your body really, how shall I say it? I think your body really grooves on that.
Yeah, no,
There's right, your nervous system understands that
mhm,
and connects to it. The movement, the action,
mhm.
and the so I think that that's it's I can see why that would be a very profoundly meditative and healthful practice. I wanted to ask you,
Mhm.
you went now 60 hours a week. I don't know if you're still working 60 hours a week. Sometimes I feel
No.
like I am as a solopreneur, you know. But I wanted to ask, how has this practice shifted your lifestyle, shifted you personally?
Mm. Oh my gosh.
It's a big question, I know.
It really is, because it's changed every single aspect of my life.
Wow.
Um, I'm going to start because you mentioned the work hours, so I'll start with that. But there's so many other aspects that are probably more jarring. But I think this is just very timely. Um, yeah, one thing I think I really learned is that it's not the hours. So I'm still a nurse. I'm not doing management anymore, but I'm still a nurse as I am launching my podcast, as I am working my life coaching business. Um, so I obviously clearly have the time and capacity to explore different parts of myself. With that said, I'm currently working as a nurse 50 hours a week. Um, and I had this conversation with a friend of mine, and I'm like, yeah, it's not the hours. Because even though I'm still working a good portion of hours right now, and um, I do enjoy it, I still have the capacity to do all these other things that I enjoy. I'm not leaving, work and coming home and being so dead exhausted that I can't talk to anyone. Or, on a weekend, I'm so tired, I don't feel like doing anything anymore. It's the exact opposite. I'm, coaching clients, when I get home in the evenings. I have a client that's on with me on a Sunday. We're recording interviews on Sundays. Um, you know, I still have the energy to do all these things. So I think that's a really big piece, because it goes back to my original part of the story where I thought it was the hours. And fast forward, it's not the hours. I just wasn't doing enough of what was lighting me up.
Yeah, to replenish yourself, right?
Hmm.
Absolutely. So you must when do you do it in the mornings, before you
Yeah,
go to work?
I do. Some parts of my personal practice vary, um, and I think as my life changes and evolves, my practice is going to change and evolve.
Sure.
Um, Currently, I'm actually doing 2,000-day meditations, and I'm currently doing those two in the evening. One of them I'm actually going to be completed by the end of this year, 2024. So I'm super excited for that. Um, so that is actually my focus right now, is those 2,000-day meditations. Beginning of this year, I started to do a short physical practice in the morning. So but it's changed. Sometimes you know I'll do something for 90 days or 60 days, and then I'll take a break, and then I'll change things up a bit. So it just depends what I've committed myself to for my own journey.
Yes, yes, beautiful. And how has it shifted spiritually, emotionally,
Oh yeah.
so
So
forth?
it brings me back actually to one of I think the first times I think I noticed the change in me as well. And it was, I think I was still in teacher training at the time. And I was out with my husband, and he goes to me, he's like, "You look really pretty today." And I said, "Thank you." And he almost fell over,
Oh,
because I always, and I think most women have done, is I used to always poo-poo it. I used to say, "Oh, stop it," or "Oh my God, you're ridiculous," or "Oh my God, my hair's a mess," or "I look exhausted." I would totally diminish everything he said. But
mm,
this time I just said, "Thank you."
oh,
And he told me like how happy he was that he said thank you, that I said thank you to him, and how he would always, he actually got upset all the times I would, pass over what he said. And when you look at it, it's like, it's like you're right. He he believed that I looked pretty in those times. Why would I diminish that? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Other than the cultural conditioning that we're told to, why can't we accept it and believe it? And I think it was that moment is when we noticed, I noticed, and even he was noticing that things were shifting. The anger that I had, kind of relieved. I started to I would almost say I loved myself more because, you know, why else would somebody not accept a compliment and then finally accept the compliment? So I think that was a piece of it. And I remember asking in teacher training, they asked, hey, we've been doing this for how long now? What have you noticed had changed? And I noticed I was like, wait, my anxiety's gone. I'm not having the swirling thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to control every aspect of my life. And I almost couldn't believe it.
That's huge. That's huge.
Absolutely
Oh
huge.
my gosh.
Absolutely huge. Um, and that itself was just like, okay. And that from that piece, that's when I was like, okay, there's something more to this. This is not just this, um, 60s old school, practice from India. It's not just yoga. There's more to this. And I really feel like this particular practice, I'm not saying the other practices don't do this, but they're just not my experience. But the more that you get connected with your body, the more that you do regulate your nervous system, you actually do come into a deeper connection with yourself, and you can start to see things from a more neutral standpoint. So one thing that they term with Kundalini Yoga is that it brings the unconscious to the conscious awareness. And there's a lot of truth to that statement. All these things that may have happened in the past, or you thought, or, things that, used to drive you crazy, they surface up in time, and you're able to see it from a very neutral perspective without this browbeating of yourself.
Judgment, right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe that a big piece of the release of the self-judgment and being able to look at this is that we have established a deeper trusting relationship with ourselves. And a big part of that is the ability to regulating our nervous system and bringing us back into that alignment and balance. Because if we're going to be in full alignment, it's not just physical. It's physical, it's mental, it's emotional, and it's spiritual. But if our physical body is completely out of alignment, i.e., we're dysregulated with stress and anxiety, whether it's, the spectrum of the sympathetic, the fight and flight, or the complete dorsal state, and you're completely disassociated, whether it's one extreme or the other, if you're out of balance physically, you can't be in balance mentally, emotionally, or even spiritually, because you're going to be blocking anything that comes in unconsciously, obviously, but
Right. No, absolutely. I feel like so many people, I always are living what I like to say from the neck up. I know people have heard me say this before, and really it's your instrument. Your body is your instrument that you're meant to use it. You're meant to become aware of it, to use it to release, to heal any trauma or emotional issues, to really have that awareness of it. And I feel like a lot of times people don't want to have the awareness. They just want to, play the video game, or like you say, become workaholics and sort of like become, numb and unconscious. But that's like a recipe for, as you say, stress, anxiety, heart attack, whatever, to, yeah, you got to feel it to heal it. I just heard that. I'm going to steal that from somebody. And I feel that very strongly. Yeah,
Well,
very strongly.
we live in a culture, right, that really magnifies thinking, right?
Absolutely.
Thinking our way through our problem. We have to think our way to do this, that, and the other thing. It's a very top-down approach. but that top-down approach it's not always effective. And the practices like yoga and, somatic healing work, right, which is also very, has a lot of, intricacies with yoga. Even if you look at nervous system work in itself, it does cross over into yoga. The reason why it's effective, though, is that it's a bottom-up approach. And that's, our body communicates to our brain, and then our brain communicates to our body. It's a constant feedback loop between our brain and our body. So, just like anything else, if you want to tackle a problem, you want to tackle it from both angles.
Mm, beautifully said, yes. And that's something that I've been just noticing. A lot of people want to raise their vibration, and a lot of people are doing a lot of activities that are very, the upper chakra work type of thing, with the crown, and I'm still working on my root, frankly. I mean, and that's what I found that your practice and the practice that I work with really getting into the body, it it activates it. I don't know enough about the chakras. I just know that when I'm not feeling grounded and centered and in my body, I don't feel my world isn't right,
That's
you
a
know?
very intuitive statement, Ruth. And just to help demonstrate how spot on you are in that. So the frequency of our brain is, I think it's like 7.8 hertz. And that is the same as the frequency of the earth. So
Human resonance, yes.
yes, yes.
Yes.
So we have that. So we want to take that from one aspect of it, but also one of my coaches who is a channeler, she always believed that if you really want to open your channel, you really need to ground yourself.
Hmm.
And when you think about it, it makes sense. You need to ground yourself so you have that safety, you have that security, you have that firm foundation. So you're able to not just open up and let things come in, but then you want to be able to have it come in and then put it into action and remember it. Because if you're only working right on those upper chakras, you may have stuff come in, but you may not remember it clearly. You may not be able to put it in action. We need both.
Yeah, and the action chakras, I think that of the creativity, the sexual
Mm-hmm.
power of that,
Yes.
uh, of your sacral chakra, of your solar
Mm-hmm.
plexus, I think those are
Yeah.
absolutely so important, crucially
Yep.
important for that fire, bringing that
Mm-hmm.
fire in. And I think when I try to balance my chakras in my way, I do it with toning, and I also just do it with
Mm-hmm.
my intention. But I'm always thinking of the root mixing with the sacral, and the orange and the red mixing with the yellow, and the colors,
Yes.
because it's all that fire, that beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it lifts, and of course it lifts up to the heart, and it connects, and then the throat and so forth. So it's an interest. I think we're such a as human beings, we're so fascinating, really. I mean, being in this body and having these aspects that are, can't see, feel, hear, touch, taste,
Mm-hmm.
as well. It's fascinating. I wanted to ask you too, because of the origins of Kundalini Yoga are Indian, I assume,
Yes.
or
Yes.
is it now how? Because that's like it's like an offshoot of one of the branches of yoga, or
Oof. There's so many.
and there's
So
so many,
there
right?
are so many different branches of yoga. So truthfully, um, yes, it was brought over to the West. And there are a lot of people going back to try to find the original origin of Kundalini Yoga, but it goes very, very far back,
Okay.
to a particular man, I think it's Guru Nanak, that is very much heavily mentioned. Um, there was actually somebody who was actually doing like a PhD study trying to look at the origins. And I actually, looked at was part of his presentation on looking at the origins. And really what came out is that it's to the point that if we really want to find the true origins, we now have to really go there and get to the word of mouth. because that's what's really, you can only do so much, from looking at papers and from, um, looking at different types of yoga and seeing actually how um, some of them look very similar, how some look different, seeing how the different types evolved. It was a very interesting, study, because he even brought up, some different like gymnastics poses and how you kind of saw this is now was coming into Kundalini around this point in time, how things have changed and evolved. So it's all very interesting and very, very fascinating. I think it's so ancient that we'll probably never know the true origins of it. Like so many of the practices. I just know that I try to do my best to honor the lineage of Kundalini Yoga.
Yeah, yeah. No, I can imagine. I had somebody who was an Ayurvedic practitioner on
Mhm.
a while ago, and she was talking about how were they were bringing a recording of the precepts of Ayurveda on leaves. They were writing them on leaves. It's like, what? You know, just to record things. So yeah, this is an extremely ancient technology, bottom line. Uh,
Yeah.
and I know that there's a lot of Nada yoga, it is the yoga of sound, and there's a lot of
Mhm.
when you do mantra, I wanted to get into that a little bit, and the mudras too. But when you do mantra, the certain consonants, with the way your tongue hits the mouth. I think you were talking about that too, the way where your tongue presses the points. There are all these um, points in your mouth, that there is a specific reason why these words are formed like that, because they're actually hitting different acupressure, I guess they're acupuncture points really, or
Yes.
what are they called? Nadis uh,
Hmm.
in your mouth. I don't know. I just find that incredibly um, complicated and fascinating at the same time.
Well, if we just to kind of boil it down a little bit, the mantras that are used in Kundalini Yoga are in the language Guru Monk, and from this ancient technology, there are certain effects, like you mentioned, of striking your tongue on your upper palate. So you are activating different meridian points. So there are 64 meridian points on the hard palate and 20 meridian points on the soft palate.
Amazing.
So when your tongue is striking those meridian points, um, you are activating the hypothalamus gland, which activates your pituitary gland. And then you start to release all the different chemicals and hormones throughout the body, i.e., your glandular system. And that's when you start to have enhanced, feelings of mood, improved emotion. Um, and you're also starting to stimulate the vagus nerve, because the vagus nerve also starts at your ear, but it also goes down by your jaw and then down through your neck, and it goes all the way down into your intestines and back muscles. But when you start, activating the vagus nerve as well, and you're hitting the middle ear muscles, and the chanting, you are starting to have a longer exhalation phase in breath when you're doing the chanting. And that is actually causing what we call a vagal break, which basically means your heart rate starts to decrease. And when your heart rate decreases, you're starting to now bring yourself into this more neutral, connected state. And we're now activating our social engagement system. And our social engagement system is that portion of the vagus nerve that's in our heart, but also then going up and all into our face as
Mm,
well. So
mm.
we're starting to basically bring ourselves in a sense of safety, bringing ourselves to a state of calmness. We are essentially regulating our nervous system
Yeah,
as
yeah,
we are doing this, and
yeah.
bringing ourselves, back into what I call the ventral state, the connected state.
Yeah, there's a state called heart-brain coherence, and I think that
Hmm.
HeartMath coined that probably, right?
Yes.
That resting
Yep.
brain state, where you have the fields. You're literally, from what I understand it, the heart and the brain both produce an electromagnetic field, a torus
Hmm.
field, and when those are in resonance or coherence, or in train to one another, synced up to one another, that's when we are in that beautiful, beautiful heart-brain coherence,
Yes.
which,
Yes.
as you say, the feeling of safety.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
that's
that's, I think, the beautiful
fabulous.
thing too. You mentioned earlier, being in the allopathic world, how could we, get into a more holistic world? What I think is actually fascinating is that there is lots of science that is pulling all of this together right now. It's just not talked about as much, and it is falling under the realm of quantum physics. The HeartMath Institute does a ton of research, you
Yes,
know, basically demonstrating heart rate variability. And heart rate variability is very much we can work on through our breath itself, as well as those feelings of emotions of joy that are coming from our heart. And heart rate variability, that alone has been shown to improve, overall states of health. If you have a heart rate variability that's obviously not on the positive end of it, it actually could be linked with all cause all cause mortality, because it does affect. It's not just your heart, and it's not just the stress on your body, but the
right.
stress in your body does affect your heart. It affects your immune system. It affects how you relate to yourself, how you relate to others. It reflects, your microbiome in your guts. So we're all connected. And I think that's the biggest difference in the allopathic world. Everything we've been taught and even the way we practice is all in silos.
And it's also right, as you say, silos, it's all compartmentalized.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just a set of lungs, we're not
Yep.
just a hip joint.
No,
It's a
no.
holistic holism effect. Yeah, and it's very
Yes.
interesting to me that, I get that they have specialists in different areas, but those specialists have got to talk to other specialists and they got all to get together. And I know
Yeah.
it has to be, that's a totally different model than what is being practiced now.
Oh,
It's
oh
starting though.
yeah.
I think it's starting, they're starting to do this more, as you say, because the science is starting to show this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the necessity of this and the efficacy of it too,
Well, and I think it's
Mm,
also really highlighting that a lot of our health problems are lifestyle problems.
mm-hmm.
And if we look at
Yeah,
the root of them,
yeah,
stress and anxiety is at the root of a lot of the issues that we have. A lot of the issues are cardiac issues, our immune, system issues, our mental health issues. Um, a lot of that, stems from the stress that we have on our body and on our mind, and starting looking at, okay, how can we take care of ourselves in a more holistic way?
yeah, yeah.
And, these terms that people thrown around like meditation and mindfulness and even grounding, and, you know, maybe they're really not far out. There is, science that has put this together. Um, even like we said, there's social engagement theory. That's part, we talk about that with polyvagal theory. It's a big piece to us being connected with other people and
And
how we can actually help each other come to a more neutral state. We have a choice in every moment, especially if we're around with other people.
mm,
We can have a choice. We can try to bring ourselves in the state of connection, or it can go into the state of fear and disconnection.
mm.
But we have the ability to impact that. And actually, in one of I was taking a yoga therapy class, and so I wanted to demonstrate the power of co-regulation. And co-regulation is when two people, or really it could be more than two people, but in this particular one, it's two people. We are talking to each other, but how we start to come into our own regulated states within the two of us. So we talked about regulation before. We think of it, our body is, regulated, or we're in connection, but also we could be that with another person. So what they did was, okay, one of you is going to just be really angry about something and it's just going to start like yelling and complaining to the other person about it. But the other one is going to stay there quiet and just do long, deep breathing. Mm. And you needed the breath because you didn't want to get caught up in that moment. And what we found fascinating is that, and let's face it, we've all been in these circumstances where someone came and starts complaining to you about something, right? And then what happens? You get heated about it too, right? And then we have this huge like conversation and we're all loud and we're all upset about it. When we actually did this practice, what we noticed is every person that was, angry and complaining, they eventually they just stopped. And they were like, okay, like I got out of my system and I'm done. And it ended. And the difference was it ended instead of escalating. And the only difference was the response of the other person. Because the other person didn't respond to the yelling. We didn't start talking about it and agreeing with it. We just stood there, present in the moment, and did the long, deep breathing.
Mm. That'd probably save a lot of marriages.
Yeah. That's right. Marriage Tips by Trish.
Seriously, that's beautiful. No, absolutely. If you don't get caught up in the drama of it, and that it just shows what our energies when they're also, we're sharing heart fields, right, with somebody, especially if we're next to them. And I think we're sharing our heart field. I think you and I are sharing our heart field right now because the heart
Agreed.
doesn't, right? Remember that thing that Greg Braden was saying, how the heart math is finding out about the heart not being it's in the field. It is
Yes.
it is not being bound by the typical physics of time and space, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, when you have that calm centeredness, that equanimity and you can respond rather than react to a person and respond in that very quiet way and hold space for them to just really just express their emotion and be heard and be witnessed.
Yeah.
Being witnessed is huge for, that's what coaches do, right? A lot of times you witness a person just letting it out. So that was wonderful. Wonderful that you had that experience.
Yeah. And it goes to just really show is that if you could just maintain, your breath, that's all, maintain your breath.
You have to do.
You could actually help bring someone down by you maintaining that breath.
Because you're in training them to your calm.
Yes, it's co-regulation. Yeah.
Fast. And that's all vibration and frequency again.
It is. It is.
Very cool. So cool. Well, fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I was going to ask you, do you ever just do the mantra without the
without music?
Without the yoga? Yeah.
Oh, mantra without the yoga. Oh, actually, if you want me to be completely honest, there's times where, and I would say most of the time, I play mantra in my car when I'm driving all the time.
Wonderful.
All the time. I mean, sometimes I'll just do a podcast nowadays. I feel like if I'm doing podcasts, I should, listen to podcasts. But when I'm not doing that, I'm listening to mantra music. That's, I have, a whole very long list.
Yes. Yeah.
That I have in there. And that's my go-to.
Beautiful. What's one of your favorite mantras?
Oh my gosh.
I can remember. I know you probably have quite a few.
There's so many, and it changes all the time. So I really
hard to answer, right?
It's very hard to answer. It's very hard to answer. It is. It is hard to answer. I mean, I would say that the mantra I would say I could gift everyone is the mantra Sat Nam. It is SATNAM, if anyone wants to, spell that out. But Sat Nam means I am. That would be the English translation, I am. The longer translation is truth is my identity. And what I love about that mantra, right, is that we're eliminating the identity of I'm a, I'm a, and aligning yourself with your job or with, your marital status or your childbearing status. And when we look at it, I think when a lot of us, in our culture and our society, we held our identities held on something that's external to us, right? Like I'm a homeowner, I work as this. And, when something, massively changes in your life, it's hard enough to deal with as it is. But if you've held on to that as your identity, that's where things really spiral. And so I love about the mantra Sat Nam, truth is my identity.
Yes.
It's capturing all parts of you.
Right. I am.
I am. I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's a very, that brings you right here in the present moment too.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Because
yeah.
there's no, you're not the past, the future. You are just here. I am. Yeah. Do
Yep.
you have a way that you do that you could demonstrate for us?
Oh,
Not to put you on the spot.
the beautiful thing about the mantra, right, is that no matter what way you'll say it, Sat Nam, your tongue is gonna hit that roof of the mouth. So it's Sa
Yes, yeah.
Nam
Sat Nam.
Nam.
Okay, all right. I can kind of hear you doing it. Okay, let's
Do you want
start.
me to get closer? I could try it.
I
All
don't,
right.
yeah, go ahead. Let's try it. That sounds
Yeah.
great. I'd love to hear that. Yes, please.
Sure. I would definitely suggest put your feet flat on the ground. Make sure your spine is straight. If you feel comfortable, close your eyes and take a big inhale through your nose. So, no, so,
Sat
no,
Nam.
so,
Sat Nam.
but no.
And just that. It doesn't have to be a big, long, complicated mantra, right?
No, no,
Yeah,
it doesn't.
yeah,
It doesn't.
yeah.
It could be that simple.
Yes,
It could be that simple.
yes. And I've also heard that people will, and you may already be doing this, they'll just do it in their head silently, and that's even supposedly more
Hmm.
powerful because of our consciousness, our intention.
Yeah, it's just working
Yeah, right.
different aspects.
Mm,
Yeah. So we can chanting it out loud, you could whisper it, or you could just, we call it vibrationally chant it in your head. And it just works on different aspects
oh, beautiful.
when you do that. And that actually is done in some mantras. So I'm sorry, some meditations. So if you're chanting out loud, it's like a call to action. It's like the voice of your body. If you whisper it, it's the voice of the mind.
Mm,
And if you mentally vibrate it, it's the voice of the spirit and
mm,
the connection to the divine. So it's all
beautiful.
right.
Yeah, so beautiful. Wow. Trish, this has been a wonderful conversation. Really, so
Yes.
honored to yeah, to have you on today. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
It was just wonderful talking with you, Ruth. And if anyone would like, I do have a podcast called The Wellness Empowerment Project.
Yes.
It's on Spotify and Apple, so feel free to find us there. It is two nurses talking about the art and science of the holistic modalities, and we have met a lot of interesting people in a lot of different modalities. So feel free to check that out. If you'd like, you can follow me over at Instagram. I'm under Coach COACH underscore Trish TRISH Gent GENT. And if anyone is really looking to shed their anxiety and control and to bring themselves back into freedom and creativity, I do offer a free coaching call, and the link to that is in my bio.
Beautiful. And I'll put links, as I said earlier, to all of this in the description of the video. Well, I'm so happy that we finally got together. It was a fascinating talk, and I hope people will enjoy it. And if they have any questions, they can certainly reach out to you at your information links. And maybe we can talk more about mantra and the voice at another time. I would love to have you back on to delve into this a little bit more deeply, and maybe do more experiential, more exercises, where people can maybe see what, and listen and maybe follow along. I think that might be, as an instruction. Kind of.
Sure. Whatever you and your listeners would like, I'd be happy to.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much again, Trish. And thank you everyone so much for watching. Have a good evening or a good morning, or just have a good one. Thanks. Bye-bye.